Good morning. We'll call the Wednesday morning, September 15th, 2021 meeting of the Redistricting Committee to order. Start with roll call, please.
Mr. Hess?
Present.
Mr. Payton? Mr. Seroy?
Present.
Ms. Weber?
Present.
Ms. Parker?
Present.
Ms. Polk?
Present.
Mr. Featherling?
Present.
Mr. Hunter?
Present.
Mr. Collins?
Present.
We have a quorum.
Is there any public comment at this time? Any public comment? Okay, going back to the minutes from May 28th, 2021. Need a motion to approve them. They were never approved. Mr. Seroy
Polk.
and Ms. Polk. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Census impact to current approved map. Mr.
So
Wheeler.
we, it's no secret that we had some substantial changes due to the census numbers, the decrease, which most rural areas in the United States saw a decrease. We saw a substantial decrease, and it had a profound impact on the map that we had drawn, just in terms of population growth in areas. And what we didn't expect was the amount of population loss in the city of Kankakee. We expected there was going to be some loss, but not to the numbers that we did. So, and I don't know if Del, if you want to talk about the process on what our computer system is in terms of GIS and how the data gets in there and all of that kind of stuff. Maybe that might help the committee.
I can. We buy our data, and our mapping system was from a company called Maptitude. And when the new figures came out, within about 3 days of the new figures coming out, they had already formulated it to what they call the legacy file that takes the new data and applies it to the old block numbers, so that you're working with the same geographies that you were before. And then we installed that into the machine, and the next thing we did was overlay the approved map that the county board approved back in, what was it, June, something like that?
I believe so, yeah.
Onto it, and then that calculated the different deviations, or the new deviations based on the new information, and there were some pretty large numbers.
Right.
That were like 27% in some cases, I think.
Right.
So presented that to Mr. Wheeler, and he went to work on starting to develop new maps that would decrease that deviation. Right.
And so that was basically the process. Once that data came in, I was no more than, what, a week and a half? And we were able to get that into the system. Might even been quicker.
Yeah, it was very quick.
It was pretty quick. And so I'll show, the first thing I was going to do is just to show you what our new map that the board approved looks like with the new population numbers. So let me get ready to share the screen here, because that was the starting point of what I had to build on. We'd already made a decision on a map. Well, if it had to be tweaked, let's go back to what the board already approved. That was the thought process there, because we've already gone through all the public comment and all that other stuff. No, I'll be putting it up here. No, it's in GIS. And what it's the old map with the new population. That's what you're going to be looking at here. So
that'd be the map D that we approved in June.
Yeah, I believe that was it.
Map D that we approved in June.
Is it dog?
Dog. So when you start looking here, let me move a couple things around so I can negotiate this layer. When you start looking at the big impacts, I'll go down to the city of Kankakee first. As we heard from Mr. Rowe, and also there, you want to get those deviations as low as possible, and then the counties associations, lawyers, all the various different ones, all basically said that really the courts get involved when you get over 10%. You need to keep it below 10%. I really wanted it to be below 5 in this, because when you see these numbers, look what happened in Kankakee. In 17, it went to -13. In 13, it went to -15, 19, -10. That is an unacceptable number. You had +10 and 25. And if you go up, then it becomes even more pronounced. 26 went up to 26%, 26.75% over the mean. This is over the average of all the districts. So, and if you keep going north from there, you know, District 5 went to 7%, which is still within the bounds of reason, but it's still a little bit higher than we would want. You go up into the Manteno area, there was still, you know, 6% over the mean. And if you remember, we were like around the 1% area with the other map.
The highest one was 2%.
2%, right,
highest.
right. So the issue becomes where all the population was gained and lost, and I think there's a general acknowledgement that there was some potential counting issues in Kankakee during the pandemic that may have caused that, but regardless, we have a legal obligation to base it on the census numbers. And we actually have many, many more restrictions on the counties as opposed to what the state of Illinois does. They can gerrymander their maps, and they do, and they did. Under our situation, we have very hard and fast rules that we have to stick with. And so with this new map, and I'll switch in a moment, but I just wanted to kind of get this out of the way and say, does anybody have any questions about the process, getting the new data in and what you're looking at here? Like District 9 went to 7.75%. You know, so, and even Hopkins Park, you know, went to negative 4.61. Again, legal, but not optimal. So my task became, how do I get the population growth areas and redraw these maps without completely blowing it up, but redraw it and push those districts south to give Kankakee the population balance that it needs in those districts. It became a very difficult process that, well, we finally concluded. So if there's no questions, I'll move on to what the suggestion is for you guys to debate. Do you have anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention one thing, you know, with a loss of like 3,000 people in Kankakee, they legally should have lost a district.
Yeah, if it was like the U.S. House was,
right?
We lost a seat in Washington. Kankakee, the impact of that undercount would be the loss of a district in Kankakee. The problem is, I think most lawyers agree that would be a federal voting rights issue.
Correct. Because
those are mostly communities of color, and it would upset the balance of the board. And again, it's not intent, it's impact. The intent may be is to have a balanced map. The impact, I think we would run into federal voting rights issues. And I think that is something that we have to be very cognizant of, even though we're not supposed to consider it per the state rules. It's a really tricky wicket we're in there, right? You know, trying to navigate that. You almost have to say, okay, I know what the map looks like, I know what the demographics are of this area, and we have to steer clear of alienating any communities of color, especially on representation on this board. So that's why we push the population down and redrew the districts to grab little pieces of the districts that are going south, and then that district has to get a little bit of that district, and you know, so you're pushing the population numbers more south into Kankakee, and again reducing some of the overages in these other areas. Now, if you look into Kankakee, it would make sense. Well, I just can't grab something from 19 to go into 13, because then I've created another problem there. So you can't just grab from the districts around Kankakee from each other, because you've not fixed anything. You've just made a bad problem worse. So again, you have to start pushing things down and move things around a little bit, but without wholesale changes. Like I left moments, the intent was to have moments the way that the board decided, was, you know, the representation split the way that it was. Instead of between, I think 4 people it was before.
4 people.
Now it was down to 2, which is pretty much, you know, well, 1 and then 1 for the border around moments, I believe is what we were looking at. So it was a better map, I think, we had than the previous, but it just needed changes. So any other questions on that? Because we can dig into that more, and I could zoom in on anything. Obviously, you know, if I'm taking from 26, then you have to have things that 27 gains, which pushes it over to 22. You almost see the domino effect that when you start moving down through these cities. If you do something over here in Hopkins Park, it has an impact over in Rockville Township at some point. So I mean, this is all connected. So it's definitely not as easy as just saying, you know, throw a dart at a map and say this is it. All right, so with no other questions there, I'm going to stop sharing. If I can figure this out here.
Just actually hit the X up
Yeah, I'll
there.
hit the X there.
You
and
keep
then
sharing, just bring it back up.
it'll just pop up now.
Yeah.
And here is the balanced version of what you just saw for consideration. These are all in your packet. So what you'll see is I think our highest number is 4.66 as far as deviation from the mean. And I've run that past the state's attorney's office. They said that is well within the boundaries of doing what we need to do, especially if you consider if you start grabbing from other districts around it, it's going to have a negative impact on the next one. Again, that ripple effect. So if you look down into Kankakee, we've got those deviations, you know, -1, -0.76, -3.05. The township lines are respected as much as they possibly can be. The reason we can go over a township line is to grab population as necessary, and we needed that for 17. And 5 needed to give up some population over in just that little area. So again, it's a balance. It's all on, and it's, by the way, it's not voters, it's people. It's people that live in that area. And if you look at the percentage of registered voters, you can kind of extrapolate, you know, what that number might be within each district. But that changes too. You may have more voters in one district than registered voters versus people that live there than registered voters that people that live there in another district. So, you know, there's the balance is just on lives in that district. Does that make sense? Because we've been through all this. I just want to recover it for people that may be watching this for the first time. So does anyone want to drill into any particular area and look at something?
Mr. Seabright.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Wheeler, are there any of these boundaries that cut through a yard, or are they all pretty much road boundaries or street boundaries?
We only have census block, so there's no going through an alley or through somebody's yard, or
That's what I was.
it's one side of the street or it's the other side
Okay.
of the street. Yeah,
Thank you, sir.
yeah.
So you live on the corner of 3 districts?
You're on whatever side of the street that district is.
You could actually have 3,
Use your mic, please.
you could have 3 districts around you the way it's set up.
Well, yeah, you could if you lived on the corner of a street and you're in one, and then could be another one over there and another one over there.
Yeah, because we got that in Mantino in a couple spots.
Census blocks follow physical boundaries. So center line of a street, could be a center line of an alley, a creek, a river, but physical boundaries. So it wouldn't cut through a yard.
Right.
Unless there's a creek running through the yard, possibly, but.
I just haven't, as I've been through this ad nauseum, I mean, literally 50, 60 hours of doing this stuff between all the different versions. I haven't seen one go through an alley. Creeks, yes, but usually that's going through a farmland and you grab the other side, and there's really only like maybe 4 houses on that whole big square.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have a huge number impact.
It's rare to see an alley, but I can't say that you wouldn't see an alley.
Right. I just don't remember one, to be honest.
Is there a way that you could show them what we looked at before when you just moved it over like a block or something like that, what it does to the population?
Sure, yeah.
Just so everybody has an idea of what happens.
And let me just pick one here. How about Bourbonnais is usually a pretty good one. Because you never know where an apartment building is going to be. You know, because that's just not, it was one census block, but there could be, you know, 40 families that live in that apartment building. So let me click on that real quick here. And let's do 20. And I'll just, let's see what happens if I do. So you got 1.59% negative from the mean and 3.44. So if I click that, just that little click put it to 12%. See what I mean?
And the other one to 14.
So before I forget.
Yeah. I mean, this is what he's been dealing with all this time, is each little block with a different populations.
Yeah, I'd have to remember to go backwards, or else I save over it and then Dell doesn't like me. And I might have done that like, I don't know, 10, 15 times. So.
Or more.
Yeah. he learned to say versions like daily, because you know you get moving on this and you're doing different versions and trying to figure it out. So that's just an example of what this is. Just and by the way, if I did the same thing out in like 5 out here, it wouldn't have any impact at all, because there may be 1 or 2 houses. Like if you look up here in the district that's currently 6, I had to grab these to get this a little bit closer. So just these little blocks over here, but there's a few houses out in this area, out towards Mr. Fairfield's area where he lives out there. So but I had to grab from his district to give it to 28, and then 27 had to get some of 26, and then 22 got some of 27, I believe. And you know, so you'll see like little things like these little blocks here. You see these little 2 streets here. That's just so I could get that down and get 25 down, because you remember they were plus 10% when we started this. 25 was. So you know, and this there's a couple of streets here, a couple of streets here. It's just little. That's why those exist. It's all population. It's not that there's any type of a particular voter base that's being attached to it, because we don't even have that data in here. So, nor could we or should we.
Ms. Parker?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Andy, would you mind scrolling down 5 where it would kind of merge in? There's Arsenal subdivision off Skyline Road. I can't see that. Is that now going to be 17 or 18 there?
This is Skyline here, I believe. This is the one that goes towards.
That's Spleer.
That's Spleer.
That's Blair's. Okay, so I got, okay.
Arsenal Skyline is out here, right?
No, Arsenal Road would be in District 5.
It's in 5.
Yeah.
So then the Arsenal subdivision then where,
Yeah, Skyline subdivision is in District 5.
okay,
on that map.
I just wanted to make sure.
in 5?
Yes.
See the green lines? These little green thin lines?
Yeah.
Those are the old districts. So,
Oh, got it.
so
Okay.
that'll help you get a little bit of an idea on where things might have altered a little bit. You know, curves, waves.
Yes.
Does that make sense? Where I show those green lines?
Up there you can see them. There you go.
So again, this was cut into neighborhoods. Remember, we made Maple Street one big boundary just to make a clear line and stop, if we could, stop dipping into other neighborhoods if at all possible. So that's kind of where we went with all that. So
17?
Yeah, 17.
Yes.
Pretty much same difference. You see the green line of where it used to be, and over here. And again, in order to get that population, you had to grab. There was a few out here and get those all over in this district, and then a few streets over here. So again, we're 0.99%, 0.76, and negative 3.5. Those are acceptable numbers. There's not a disenfranchisement going on either there or in the other districts that are up in the northern part where it's +4 and +4. You can't, I couldn't, and I worked on this a lot. I couldn't get these numbers any lower. There's only so much you can push down. And then you start looking at census blocks that if you click on it, it goes like all the way down and around something. And I wished I had a good example of that, but I just need to grab a little bit of it and it grabs a lot. And so you're kind of boxed in by the rules, if you will, in the way the census map and the blocks are laid out. Is that I wish I could describe it better.
Yeah, you actually see that a lot more along the river, where it'll pick, the census block might be 2 miles long, but 300 feet wide. So you've got this long finger going out if you choose to put that in one district over the other.
Yeah.
That's fairly common there.
Yeah, I remember that happened over here in Riverview, and I know that it happened up towards 23, I believe, as well.
Right.
Like if you were to click on something, it just takes this and part of that. Yeah. There's no middle ground there. You can't divide that up.
And you want to keep your districts compact, so that kind of goes against that.
Any other specific questions? I want to make sure everybody knows it's not wholesale changes. I just had to do little things along the way to start pushing that population south.
Mr. Featherling.
Andy, we kind of all knew you were gonna have to do a little here and there when we did it in June, didn't we know? We're expecting
it, but I didn't have to didn't think I'd deal with plus 26 from the mean, or negative 15 and 10 and 12 and plus 10. I didn't think it was going to be that much in certain areas, but we knew we were going to have to move some things around if the census came in time. You know, and when we did this, the new law wasn't out, it wasn't signed, so we kind of did things the right way. We spent a lot of time on the front end getting public input, being open and transparent in these meetings. Now I'm just tweaking what we already decided on to be legal, and I could say that the agreement when I asked for the information from the state's attorney, he said, yeah, you're in the 4s and lower. He said, you're fine. So in terms of the state requirements.
Any other questions?
Looks good.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Yeah, just a question. And I know with some of our new procedures, are we going to be able to get a more detailed boundary for the various districts?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be through GIS and all that.
Right,
yeah,
right,
once
right. That's what I was
saying.
know,
we can, with the maps that we've handed out, by the way, we have those deviations in the packet here. I want to make sure everybody knew that. This will all go up online, you know, and you can see the streets where they're at on the street level. So we think we got it out there, and if we need more for the board, just let us know. Right. We can sit with Dell and go through it and all that stuff. If it's before or after it passes,
and Dan will, once it's approved by the board, Dan will make all his adjustments, correct?
Yeah, and he needs us to get on this and get it done, because he also has to look at the precincts and all of those types of things. They're not going to change. He's pretty much okay with what we've got. It's not going to cause wholesale changes in precincts. He just, you know, Dell's going to have to go back, make sure there's no, we call them orphans, like a little spot that's unassigned or assigned to a different district over here. We're going to go through and do the little cleanups to make sure everything is just buttoned up tight. But that's between now and the next full board meeting. So if you need to see those, we can get, you know, into the system and be happy to run through it.
It's just not just for me, but for anybody else. There's going to be changes in their districts, I'm sure. Yeah. You know, even if they're small changes.
Yep, and once we go through it, and if you got questions as a board member, we can handle that. The public will have complete and total access to everything.
Good.
Yeah.
And that's key, is because Dan has to start getting this stuff together. You know, voter lists, all of that kind of stuff have to be reassigned. It's a little bit of work.
Yeah.
So he's saying, please give me time. Get this to me as soon as you can, because he's never had to deal with this before.
No, I understand.
Yeah, it's everything got pushed.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Well,
You got anything else?
No, that was it. I was just here to answer the questions and run through the
Would anybody like Mr. Searice?
I'd like to make a motion to approve
The
amended map.
the amended map, okay? Mr. Searice?
Second?
Ms. Parker seconds. Okay, let's do this by a roll call vote, just to make sure everything's on record.
Mr. Hess?
Aye.
Mr. Searay?
Aye.
Ms. Weber? Aye. Ms. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Polk?
She's muted.
You're on mute, Ms. Polk.
Aye.
There we go.
Mr. Featherling? Aye. Mr. Hunter? Mr. Collins?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, anything else come for the committee? Sorry, Mr. Kirkstra. Take a motion to adjourn. I said, sorry, Mr. Kirkstra. Take a motion to adjourn by Mr. Featherling, second by Mr. Collins. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion